PlayStation's Horizon franchise has proven to be quite a controversial one, at least online. I constantly see very heavy criticism of this series on social media, and just basing it on that, you would think this IP is pretty hated, or at the very least, overlooked. But commercially, this isn't the case at all, with Horizon being one of PlayStation's best-selling franchises ever. The games always review and sell exceptionally well, yet the online discourse tells a completely different tale. In today's video, I want to dissect this interesting phenomenon and figure out what exactly it is about Horizon that has caused such a drastic difference in its online perception and its commercial reality. When news first broke that Guerrilla, the developers of the Killzone franchise, would be creating a new open-world RPG, people were understandably a bit skeptical. The Killzone franchise had been extremely linear, so whatever this new game was would certainly be a big departure for them. Development started all the way back in 2011, and it wasn't until E3 2015 that the game was officially revealed. The reveal trailer was an absolute hit, blowing people away with its graphics and seamless gameplay. From this very first moment, Horizon was a really eye-catching game, because there was nothing else quite like it in PlayStation's catalog. The prehistoric caveman-esque characters and world combined with the flashy futuristic robot creatures was incredibly unique and compelling. Horizon Zero Dawn released on February 28, 2017 to rave reviews from fans and critics alike. The game delivered on all of its pre-release promises, something that had become increasingly rare around this time. Personally, I have a weird history with Zero Dawn. I bought it day one, hung the pre-order bonus poster on my wall, the whole 9 yards, but then the game just didn't really click for me. However, over 3 years later, I gave it a second chance, and it was here that I fell in love with the game. What I find so special about the Horizon franchise is the way they were able to make the combat feel so cinematic without ever taking control out of the player's hands. I'm not sure I've ever played a game that is able to do this so well. The story of the game never really struck a major chord with me, granted the 3-year break probably didn't help, but the world and atmosphere alongside the killer gameplay was enough to get me through the game and thoroughly enjoy my time. It seems that other players felt the same way, as Horizon Zero Dawn became a massive, and I mean massive, seller for PlayStation. The game is said to have sold 24 million copies, making it the best-selling first-party PS4 game. Some have also estimated that this would make Horizon Zero Dawn the best-selling PlayStation first-party game of all time. For Zero Dawn to be able to reach these heights as a brand new IP was incredible. However, despite the game's overwhelming commercial success, an unusual narrative was starting to form. You see, just a few weeks after Zero Dawn's release, a different open-world RPG was released. This game was of course The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild revolutionized the way both gamers and game developers viewed open-world game design. Breath of the Wild's open map with relatively little explanation of where to go or how exactly to play led to a true feeling of adventure. Suddenly, a game like Zero Dawn seemed outdated, as that game featured the traditional style of open world we had been used to, with maps featuring tons of different markers, waypoints, and UI telling you exactly where to go. Zero Dawn was universally beloved for about 2 weeks, until Zelda flipped everything on its head and changed the conversation. Don't get me wrong though, Zero Dawn was still absolutely phenomenal, most everyone who played it loved it, and it was a major success for PlayStation, far exceeding even their wildest expectations. But keep this Zelda situation in mind as we move forward, because it's only going to grow from here. After the rousing success of the first game, it was no surprise when the sequel, Horizon Forbidden West, was announced in June 2020. The game was released on February 18, 2022, and once again, the game received rave reviews and sold extremely well. Forbidden West had already sold 8.4 million copies by April 2023, after just a little more than 1 year on the market. I loved Forbidden West. Unlike the first game, this follow-up was able to click for me right away. The graphics were utterly stunning, and everything I liked about the first game was here again, but even better. Guerrilla pulled it off, and Forbidden West was able to repeat the results of Zero Dawn with its great reviews and sales. But this wasn't the only way Forbidden West echoed Zero Dawn, because believe it or not, yet another genre-defining open-world RPG was released right alongside a Horizon game. This time it was Elden Ring, a game that altered the way people viewed games, specifically when it came to storytelling. Elden Ring is a very mysterious game, not telling the player much as the story unfolds. There aren't many NPCs constantly talking to you and telling you what to do next. It's really up to you to figure that out. This is in stark contrast to Forbidden West's constant dialogue. Whether in the cutscenes, the dialogue trees, or even gameplay, these characters basically never stop talking. And this was pretty typical for most games like this, until Elden Ring made people rethink that. The conversation around these two games became pretty toxic, even more so than Zero Dawn and Breath of the Wild did 5 years prior. Forbidden West was mocked for many of the choices they made, which I don't think is entirely fair. Elden Ring is phenomenal, but that doesn't mean every game needs to be exactly like it. It's extremely extremely difficult to do what Elden Ring did, and expecting that from every open world RPG you play is just unrealistic. Would Forbidden West really be a better game if no one talked and there were no waypoints on the map or whatever? I'm not so sure. But regardless of how you feel about it, we can't ignore the fact that once again, Horizon had found itself overshadowed by a competitor. This further pushed the perception that these games aren't as successful as they really are. Even as a big fan of the game myself, it did definitely feel like Forbidden West came and went rather quickly. It didn't leave much of an impact on the gaming culture at large, despite its great commercial performance. I'm not sure I've ever seen a gaming franchise consistently sell so well, yet have such a poor lasting impression. The best comparison I can think of is to the Avatar movie franchise. The first Avatar movie is the highest grossing movie of all time, yet most people you talk to don't seem to remember much about it at all, such as character names and major plot points. It didn't feel like a cultural moment in the way that some of the other top grossing films did. It's because of this fact that so many people question the decision to greenlight 4 sequels to Avatar. I constantly saw people saying, "Who asked for this?" Yet, when Avatar: The Way of the Water released in 2022, it also made an insane amount of money and became the 3rd highest grossing movie of all time. But once again, I felt like nobody talked about that movie ever. It just came into theaters, made $2 billion, and then disappeared. And it feels like people act the same towards the Horizon games. They come out, sell 10 million copies, and then disappear. This phenomenon causes people to question PlayStation's commitment to the IP. And this leads me into the next major point of the video, which is the wild amount of Horizon projects PlayStation has put into motion over the last several years. As of the time of this video, there were only 2 mainline Horizon games since the franchise's creation 7 years ago. They also made a Horizon VR spin-off game for PlayStation VR 2, and so that brings the total games in the franchise to 3. 3 games in 7 years is really not that much, especially when one is a VR spin-off. So what's the problem? Well, let me walk you through all of the upcoming Horizon projects. All of these are either confirmed or heavily rumored to the point of basically being confirmed. There is LEGO Horizon Adventures coming out in November of this year. There is also the recently announced Horizon Zero Dawn Remastered, also coming to PS5 this year. On top of that, there is a Horizon multiplayer game in the works at Guerrilla. Then there is the apparent Horizon MMO game in development by NCSoft. And we haven't even mentioned the inevitable 3rd mainline Horizon game. Suddenly, this franchise that only had 3 releases in 7 years just jumped up to 8 total games. That is incredibly overwhelming, even for someone like myself who enjoys Horizon. For hardcore PlayStation fans who are in the know, seeing all of these projects being rumored or announced at once feels ridiculous. Now, as crazy as it seems, I can understand why all of these games exist. All of them speak to a different audience, with LEGO Horizon being for kids, the Horizon VR and the MMO targeting audiences that PlayStation doesn't typically cater to, and the Horizon multiplayer game is actually pretty cool to see because multiplayer was supposed to be in Zero Dawn all those years ago. They just couldn't quite figure it out at that time. But regardless of how logical or interesting these projects may be, having so many things going on at once has led to a major Horizon fatigue from many consumers, even those who are fans of the franchise. This has now become the other major talking point you frequently see surrounding Horizon on social media. People constantly complain that there are too many Horizon projects and that PlayStation shows too much favoritism towards it. It's reached a point now where the simple mention of Horizon has many people rolling their eyes. This fatigue combined with the already present consumer apathy towards Horizon is a pretty scary combination. It feels like I see far more negative sentiments about Horizon than I do positive ones these days. But then again, it's hard for me to say whether any of these complaints are meaningful, as social media's opinions on Horizon have never represented how the market feels. This leaves the Horizon franchise stuck in a strange limbo of sorts, as I'm never quite sure how people actually feel about it. But as we move forward, I think PlayStation needs to tread very carefully. As we move towards the release of these several upcoming Horizon projects, we will find out just how real these social media narratives are. Is this really just a case of the vocal minority screaming louder than the millions of people who do enjoy Horizon? There is no doubt an incredibly dedicated fanbase for Horizon out there, such as a Reddit community with over 250,000 members. I mention this because I have seen many Horizon fans say that they tend to stick within their own community and not branch out due to a lot of the toxicity around the IP. I think this is a major reason why we may end up seeing a lot more of the negative stuff. The fans are out there, you may just need to look a little harder for them. But then again, is it really fair to assume that anyone who says something negative about the franchise is a hater and not just someone trying to give some constructive criticism? In my opinion, I think it's a pretty big mix of the two. I do think a lot of the criticism comes from people who genuinely just don't like or care about the franchise, but there are still plenty of real fans voicing their displeasure as well. And PlayStation would be wise to take these comments into account and not just write them all off. Sure, there are millions who love this franchise and will buy anything they put out there, but there is also a not insignificant group of people telling you it's too much. With so much commitment into this franchise, they need to be careful not to overdo it and push even more people away. The game that has me particularly concerned with this is the recently announced Horizon Zero Dawn remaster. On a list of games that need a remaster, Zero Dawn would be incredibly far down my personal list. I see it as a totally unnecessary release. Normally, I would see a remaster like this and say, hey, that's not for me, but oh well, I don't really care. However, in the case of Zero Dawn Remastered, this could potentially be pretty damaging. You already have a growing narrative that there are too many games in this franchise. Why throw an unneeded remaster into the mix? I think it's even more strange that this remaster releases on October 31st, 2024, just 2 weeks before LEGO Horizon Adventures is set to release. Because to recap, you have a franchise with a growing group of people telling you there's too much of it, and PlayStation's solution is to have 2 releases come within weeks of each other. And it doesn't help that there isn't much of anything else going on with PlayStation first-party releases around this time. Anyways, I don't want to sound like I'm ranting here, I just find it to be somewhat strange. And I would hate to see a franchise I enjoy suffer from easily avoidable mistakes. I'm incredibly intrigued to see what the future of Horizon holds and to see how the market will react to the multitude of upcoming games. As the franchise continues its strange reality, floating through time as an often forgotten cash cow, PlayStation will have to hope that the growing internet narratives are not true.